Today, around the world, demagogues appeal to our worst instincts. Conspiracy theories, once confined to the fringe, are going mainstream. It's as if the age of reason, the era of evidential argument, is ending, and now knowledge is increasingly delegitimized and scientific consensus is dismissed. Democracy, which depends on shared truths, is in retreat, and autocracy, which depends on shared lies, is on the march.
But that's the anaconda, you know, the way an anaconda kills somebody. Every time you exhale, it squeezes in a little bit. You just mess up the whole thing, which as far as I can tell, it's doing great. The internet's great.
We should not resort to heavy data, sarcasm, or even takedowns in order to silence this type of information. Allow dissenting opinions to be heard, confront them, correct them, and put the accurate medical info out there so people can make the decisions for themselves.
This video was suggested to me by XX. Any chance for an in-depth video about misinformation? I know you have a video about spam bots, but I mean misinformation more in general. I responded with, oh for sure, I can start working on that. I'll probably end up defending misinformation though, because I believe even idiots have the right to free speech. So XX, this one's for you. The older I get, I feel like I become more patriotic with each growing year. And I'm beginning to realize that the founding fathers who wrote the Constitution were so bloody brilliant, and I'm growing more actively worried by the day that the golden age of the internet is fading and literally is beginning to feel like sand slowly slipping through the creases of my fingers. I don't think the founding fathers could have ever prophesized that a vast network of information sharing called the internet would take over our lives, and for the first time in human history, people began being able to learn anything they want about anything they're interested in without having it to be told to them by the propaganda machine that is called the news.
The internet is amazing, and it's changing every day.
The way I see it, there's a dang good reason why freedom of speech is the very first of the amendments. It's one of those things that if you even tweak it just a little bit, it becomes a slippery slope that ultimately affects every aspect of our lives in ways we can't even possibly fathom or understand. And now we have people like Barack Obama, bless his heart, saying things like, the internet and social media are a threat to our democracy.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like, your opinion, man.
And I'm not gonna lie, I'm worried. At this point, everyone has become aware that YouTube and other social media platforms are beginning to heavily censor certain things they deem as misinformation. It used to be somebody would get banned every couple of months, but now it's like every 5 minutes somebody's being kicked off of YouTube. I almost picture a bunch of like CEOs behind the scenes right now high-fiving each other going, holy crap, we're getting away with this. Nobody's fighting back. And then you have little like whoever this kid is saying stuff like this.
Who's watching shit on BitChute who isn't already a Nazi?
Everyone that I disagree with is a Nazi. Which is all fine and good so long as you have alternative platforms to express yourself on, like BitChute,
Nazi,
Minds,
Nazi,
and
Nazi.
Library. It's a shame that these platforms only get a small fraction of the exposure that they otherwise would get on YouTube, but I believe that the moment the powers that be begin eradicating websites like these under the guise of stopping misinformation, then I think we're in serious trouble. And the way things are going, it looks like we're headed in that direction. This is the digital dystopia, the internet misinformation machine, a slow tiptoe to censorship.
He is spreading a conspiracy theory.
Turned into a conspiracy theory.
A baseless conspiracy theory.
Please stop unfounded conspiracy theories.
A wild, conspiracy-based movement known as QAnon.
Suggesting a conspiracy exists without any proof.
Conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy
theory.
Conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy theory. A baseless conspiracy theory.
Suggesting a conspiracy.
Conspiracy theories.
A baseless conspiracy theory.
So let's talk about this. I would be more hesitant to believe conspiracies if it didn't actually feel like every single one that's ever existed is quite literally raining down on our heads right now in the year 2020. I burped.
You who have questioned the data and fueled these conspiracy theories.
Globalism, digital currency, mark of the beast, microwave internet technology, microchips, false flags, body doubles, rigged elections, the military forcing us to do something against our will, economic collapse, whistleblowers, depopulation, revelations, communism. Holy shit, what a time to be alive. I am absolutely loving every bit of this, and if I knew how to whistle, I would be f***ing whistling right now. So if you are one of those people that thinks all conspiracies are baseless misinfo that only the stupid and gullible believe, I want to start off by posing a simple question. Who, when you really think about it, is more gullible and easily misled? Someone who only gets their information from the mainstream media and official newspapers? Or someone who gets information from the internet and alternative media that tends to promote conspiracy theories? It's a really hard question to answer. I would say both sides are gullible and naive in their own sort of strange way. The mainstream media has been caught lying numerous times and is highly regulated by the FCC and tends to promote certain agendas. So the conspiracy theorists are fed up with that and try to find information elsewhere to get away from what they believe is a machine that is constantly lying to trick the public into a false sense of security. But on the same hand, many conspiracy theories have turned out to be flat out wrong and sometimes pretty nutty.
But for the people attending the first Flat Earth International Conference here in Cary, North Carolina,
so certain people therefore classify all of them as wrong, baseless, and kinda dangerous. Both sides can be scrutinized for providing misinformation. The term fake news has been growing in popularity in recent years because the mainstream media has been caught red-handed numerous times, staging certain things, like people lining up at an emergency room to instill fear in the public. They were caught, and they admitted it. But some conspiracy theories do the same exact thing. Here's a good example for you. I've always hesitated every time the mainstream media starts bringing attention to certain conspiracy theories, QAnon being one of them. I've always kind of figured that if they're talking about it on CNN, that it must not be dangerous enough to take seriously. Last week I finally bit the bullet and decided to see what this Q stuff is all about. One of the first things I saw on one of these Q websites was a picture of a tweet from the comedian Patton Oswalt with what looked to be a young child that said, "Picked up this tasty morsel," and he tagged the picture with Comet Ping Pong, which has long been associated with underground human trafficking. It took me less than 2 minutes to find out that this image was manipulated in Photoshop. He never mentioned Comet Ping Pong, and the girl in the picture was his daughter. This is not good. I'm not the biggest Patton Oswalt fan, but now I have to imagine that Patton has to go the rest of his life being associated with something that most people who saw it didn't even bother to fact check or look up. So even if Patton Oswalt went on The Tonight Show right now and announced to the world that this tweet was fake, not everyone's gonna see it. The majority will still go on continuing to believe something that is false. So this is a perfect example of misinformation having real-world consequences. But on the same token, the mainstream media is constantly showing footage out of context to outrage their audience without giving the full story. For instance, they'll show a clip of a car driving through protesters without including the first half of the story, where the angry mob made the driver feel threatened and surrounded, when in reality, the only real mistake the driver truly made was not putting it in reverse. Anyways, so when political figureheads, in this case it happens to be Obama, bless his heart, say stuff like the internet is harmful to our democracy, when he says democracy, he basically means himself. And no, this isn't a personal attack on Obama. The same logic goes with Democrats, Republicans, Trump, whatever, whoever's in charge. It's like, of course the people in power are gonna frown upon a vast free information sharing network. It doesn't hurt us, it only hurts them. So we have to stop and ask ourselves, how harmful is misinformation really? Well, it kinda depends on what type of misinformation you're talking about. You can classify misinformation in a lot of different ways. There are 1. Conspiracy theories. 2. Information that just happens to be wrong. And 3. The classic definition of misinformation, which is information put forth to intentionally mislead you. The way that the media handles conspiracy theories does nothing but, in my opinion, raise questions as to what they're talking about. Hardly ever is a conspiracy theory debunked, ever, especially on the mainstream media. Sometimes I feel like they think we're more stupid than we actually are.
I'm too stupid to make up my own mind.
And their idea of debunking a conspiracy theory is to take the word conspiracy theory and put the word baseless in front of it.
A baseless conspiracy theory.
I'm sorry, lady talking directly to me on the news. You did absolutely nothing to make me think otherwise by doing that. How about putting forth evidence to back up the fact that the conspiracy theory may be false, and then I'll believe you? This is elementary shit right here, and as far as I'm concerned, they're just gonna continue to think they can get away with doing this. Number 2 on the list is information that just happens to be wrong. For instance, is like back in the day when I used to be on Facebook, and people would post articles titled, "Pictures leaked online of Lil Wayne begging for change in a Bleecker Street subway station." And the person posting it would be like, "Oh my god, poor Lil Wayne, he fell so fast, so hard, I can't believe this is happening to him." And anyone with a modicum of sense would immediately dub that person who believed the article as retarded, and make sure to stop associating themselves with that person, and they would ultimately end up on the person reading its block list. I'm not a big fan of the idea of blocking people, but sometimes it's the only surefire way to disassociate yourself from absolute retards. There used to be entire websites dedicated to publishing stuff like this, and I'm pretty sure you can get like sued for doing this, so I'm not sure how they managed to pump shit out like this for so long and not totally get sued by Lil Wayne's potential army of lawyers. And last but not least, number 3, which is tricky and when this whole topic starts to become highly debatable, is information that is put out there to intentionally mislead people. The worst part about all this is, I'm not going to pretend I don't completely understand the impulse to want to censor misinformation, because after all, some misinfo could actively lead to harming the public. The best example I could think of when it comes to harmful misinformation is when it comes to the efficacy of personal protective equipment, i.e. masks, i.e. chin diapers. If you think of it from the tech giant's point of view, if it is true that masks are inconvenient to wear but overall lead to the general safety of the public, then perhaps censoring misinformation like masks are harmful to your health and don't do anything is something you don't want spreading through social media, because the end result will be people ignoring safety precautions because information they saw online that may be untrue. But it makes me think of that old quote, "The road to hell is paved with good intentions." And this is when we have to start considering what, in the end, will be worse. Which boils down to this simple question. What's worse? Harmful misinformation that ultimately leads to the public acting irresponsibly? Or the draconian measures taken to combat misinformation that will ultimately lead to censorship? All of this perfectly segues into part 3, the conclusion. If you think the internet controls every aspect of our lives in the year 2020, just wait till you see what the future holds. Physicist Michio Kaku said years ago that 2030 the internet will be like wallpaper. It will be everywhere and nowhere in the backgrounds of all of our lives.
We will put the internet in your contact lens.
This is exactly why I don't see big tech censorship as any sort of small issue. It is, in fact, a huge issue that perhaps should be dealt with in its early stages, because censorship has been going on behind the scenes for years, and now they're deciding to become more bold about it. I started noticing major changes last year when instead of Googling how to use drugs safely and efficiently and being led to sites like Blue Light and Drugs Forum, the search results started leading only to Google advertisements of rehab centers. This is a sneaky way of censorship that can go into effect quietly without causing too much backlash. But now, Twitter is blocking tweets from the former president on the topic of election fraud. And I totally understand why people applaud it. After all, a lot of people hate Trump. He's not exactly the world's most humble president.
I am the chosen one.
But now I find myself wondering, is this going to go away after the election? In a year from now, if someone tweets their opinion on climate change, is a little text bubble gonna pop up and say, actually you're wrong, and then suggest accurate information dictated onto us by invisible experts that can't be wrong about anything? In this video, I hope I succeeded in highlighting both sides of the misinformation censorship argument. It isn't necessarily untrue that misinformation can lead to harming the public, but in this current scenario we're in now, it feels like we're giving tech giants an inch and they will ultimately take a yard. I may be wrong, but I absolutely agree with the earlier clip I showed of Duncan Trussell saying that the internet is fine the way it is. A free and open internet is one of the most important things that I believe contributes to a free and thriving democracy. For years they've been trying to commercialize and censor the internet with things such as the Stop Online Privacy Act and net neutrality. And so far, the public has spoken and won the battle at every turn. But just because we've won these battles doesn't mean we've won the war. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to my channel for more content related to all things both digital and dystopian. Or don't. Thanks for watching.